In today's video, we're going to talk about a few multiclassing build ideas, but first, how does it work? Multiclassing in Baldur's Gate 3 will be similar to that in D&D 5th edition, but not exactly the same. So when you level up in Baldur's Gate 3, you'll be presented with the option to continue leveling in your current class, or you can delve into the world of multiclassing and choose an entirely different class while maintaining the levels that you have in your current class. It's important to keep in mind, though, that the moment that you decide to take a level in another class, your character level will never be the same as your class levels, ever again, unless you respec out of multiclassing. So if you're a level 5 fighter and you decide to multiclass into the Barbarian class, you are now a level 5 fighter, a level 1 Barbarian, which is character level 6. Your class levels and character level will never be the same again. Now, the reason why it's important to understand this concept is because some things in the game are tied to your character's level, such as your proficiency bonus increase, which happens at character levels 5 and 9, and also 13, but we're not reaching 13 in Baldur's Gate 3. And also, the amount of XP required to level up is scaling off of your overall character's level. Your class levels are very important as they determine what class features are given to you. So when a fighter reaches level 2, whether you're multiclassing or you are a pure fighter, they get action surge, but that's class level 2. Your character level is irrelevant. Also, it's important to note that ability score increases, the thing that you get to do at levels 4, 8, and 12, where you can increase your ability scores or take a feat. Well, that is tied to your class level, not your character level. At least that's how it works in D&D 5th edition, but it is possible that Larian could have messed with this in Baldur's Gate 3. So if you started off by taking 3 levels in one class and then 4 levels in another, you wouldn't be getting that ability score increase until you reach character level 7, while those that stick to one class get that ability score increase at character level 4. Now, some of you might be thinking, why in the 9 hells would I want to multi-class and make it take longer to get certain things and also prevent myself from being able to reach max level 12 in any given class? Well, the answer is quite simple. Many of the actually, pretty much all of the classes in D&D 5th edition and Baldur's Gate 3 are front-loaded, meaning the majority of the extremely powerful, unique features that they get are in the first half of a class level's progression. Barbarians get Rage at level 1, Druids get Wild Shape at level 2, Fighters get Action Surge at level 2, Rogues get Sneak Attack at 1, Paladins get Divine Smite at 2, and the list goes on. And then don't forget that all of the classes' subclass choices present themselves between the levels of 1 and 3, and subclasses, of course, offer their own unique, powerful abilities. Reaching max level in a class, so class level 12, sure, it will be nice as you'll get an ability score increase or your choice of a feat, and perhaps a few other things for some of the other classes, but, you could also give up class level 12 and instead be a fighter that can rage, or a paladin who has extra sorcerer spell slots and can divine smite till the party's no more. Now, if you choose not to multi-class or it stresses you out, and you know what, I will get a new webcam at some point in the near future. Let's say 200k subscribers, I'll finally upgrade my damn webcam, okay? But if you choose not to multi-class or it stresses you out a little bit, that's perfectly fine too. And you can just stay one class, which is probably what I'm going to do on my first run. But just know, there are some really powerful multi-class combinations out there. Before we get into a few of these combinations, there's a few things that you should keep in mind, though, and that is, what is the primary ability for the class or classes that you want to multi-class into, and how are your ability scores currently looking? Sure, you can multi-class as much as you want in this game, but are you really set up for it is the question. For example, if you're a sorcerer, and sorcerers use charisma to power their spells, and you multi-class into the Cleric class, which uses wisdom to power their spells, well, your ability scores may not be looking that great for that. And it may even be really hard to make your ability scores look good for that, as you only have a limited amount of points to spend in character creation, and spreading them too thin is not always a great idea. For example, if you maxed out charisma, dexterity, and constitution to help out your sorcerer and character creation, 3 great ability scores to invest into for a sorcerer, and you ended up dumping wisdom or didn't put much into it because you didn't have any points left, and then you decide to multi-class into the Cleric class, many of the Cleric spells that you get are going to be a bit gimped in your hands. Although it's important to note that not every spell or feature in this game goes off of an ability score, and you can plan your multi-classing build around using the class features or certain spells that are not necessarily tied into ability scores. But with that said, when you can find 2 classes that share a primary ability, such as the Sorcerer and Warlock, both of which have spells that are powered by charisma, Well, then you don't have to worry as much about spreading ability scores too thin to please both classes. That's an excellent combination when thinking about ability score optimization. Well, Wolf, what about the prerequisites required for you to meet in order to be allowed to multiclass? Larian did away with those prerequisites, so you can multiclass into any class that you want at any time. And yes, that means you could technically take one level in every single class and be a level 1 barb, level 1 fighter, level 1 warlock, level 1 cleric until you reach character level 12. It's crazy, and Larian said there's actually an achievement for that. Now, do note, though, that when you multiclass, although you do gain most of the new class's features, you don't necessarily gain all of the starting proficiencies. And there's also limitations to how this multiclassing works. So when you multiclass as a wizard into the sorcerer class, you don't get double the spell slots. Or if you're a cleric and a paladin, you don't get double the channel divinities. Extra attack also does not stack if you're playing 2 martial classes, or if you're playing a pure martial class, when you multiclass into a spellcaster class, you don't get as many spell slots as that spellcasting class would get on their own. You are more limited, which of course makes sense for balancing reasons. All right, let's get into the fun part and talk about a few multiclassing builds that you might consider without getting too crazy in depth, because I'll save those videos for official launch. So the first multi-class build idea is a bit more advanced, but I'm going to keep most of these pretty simple, and that is to combine the Pact of the Blade Warlock, and you get to choose your Pact at level 3 as a Warlock, with any other charisma-based spellcasting class. So Pact of the Blade in Baldur's Gate 3, and this is a Larian homebrew, allows a Warlock to use their charisma modifier for melee attacks instead of strength or dexterity. This of course makes a melee Warlock build quite appealing, but it also makes several multi-class combinations very appealing as well. For example, when you play as a Paladin, many times you're struggling trying to figure out how many points do I need to put into strength to power my melee attacks, and how many can I afford to also put into charisma to power my spellcasting. There's a bit of a battle going on there. But if you take 3 levels into Warlock and take Pact of the Blade, your Paladin's melee attacks will now be powered by charisma, no longer strength or dexterity. If you plan this ahead, you could technically dump strength or not care nearly as much about it and focus everything you got into charisma and other ability scores. This combination also makes the idea of playing as a melee sorcerer much more appealing, and it also works great with bards, especially a melee-focused bard such as a swords bard or a valor bard. Also, don't forget that Warlocks get Eldritch Blast and Hex at level 1, and Eldritch Blast is one of the best cantrips in the game, especially when you get invocations for it, and Hex is like Hunter's Mark. You put it on enemies and deal additional damage. The Pact of the Blade Warlock multiclass, where you put 3 levels into Warlock, is going to offer some amazing build potential, and I'll definitely have a few builds out over the coming months. The next multi-class combination, and do note that I have been looking at the Dungeon Dudes YouTube channel for these ideas. I will leave a link below to their channel in the video description. They are a fantastic tabletop-focused channel. And this multi-class idea is a little bit more simple, and the focus of this one is getting the Fighter's level 2 feature called Action Surge, which allows you to take an additional action on your turn once per short rest. So 2 levels into Fighter combined with any martial-based class, but actually this can be really useful for any class in the game, as getting that additional action once per short rest can make a huge difference in a round of combat. And if we think about combining this with spellcasters, which might not be as optimal as martial classes, but think of playing as a wizard or sorcerer and being able to use Action Surge to cast 2 fireballs at the start of a combat encounter. That's insanely deadly. And also don't forget that fighters at level 1 get proficiency with all weapons and all armor, so this now opens up new builds that are focused around your equipment. And in a game like BG3, where there's going to be so many magical weapons and armor, this is going to be quite fun. Fighters also get to choose a fighting style at level 2, which can be useful for basically every class, as not every fighting style is based on a specific weapon choice. The next multi-class combination focuses in on getting 2 levels into Paladin for their Divine Smite melee spell, and then combining that with other melee classes and subclasses, and this can be really powerful. This is a great way to give your fighter a little bit of spell casting, and of course being able to Divine Smite on melee weapon attacks is really cool and deadly when you're actually not a full-on paladin. And then also, you can't forget that all of the charisma-based caster classes in the game will now gain weapon proficiencies and armor proficiency from your level 2 paladin, once again adding in nice options for your casters to begin to get up close and personal. Since Astarion is so popular, we of course have to throw in the Rogue here, and the Rogue multiclass can be great for not just combat, but also more RP non-combat gameplay. So the Rogue gets sneak attack at level 1 and also expertise. Gaining sneak attack and combining that with other martial classes such as the fighter or ranger can change your style quite a bit as you become perhaps more of a sneaky fighter with, explosive damage at the start of combat. And also getting sneak attack as a ranger for just the cost of 1 class level can be pretty potent. Expertise gives rogues double their proficiency bonus in 2 skills, and being able to get expertise as pretty much any other class can really pump up your skills game in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, if you want to get more advanced with the rogue multiclass, you could start thinking of the rogue subclass of the assassin and their level 3 feature called Assassinate. Now add that on top of getting expertise and stealth, and then combining that with a paladin and, let's say, divine smite. Some really interesting synergies that we have going on here. Next up is a multi-class build focused on taking at least 1 level in Cleric, because Clerics get their subclass choice right away at level 1. And those of you who are familiar with these subclasses would know that the Cleric has a lot of choices, and each subclass choice comes with its own proficiencies, some of which include martial weapon proficiency and heavy armor proficiency. So if you took 1 level into Cleric and became a war domain Cleric, well, you just gave yourself heavy armor proficiency and martial weapon proficiency at the cost of just 1 level into Cleric, and it's really cool to combine this with other classes that don't get those proficiencies. As a level 1 Cleric, you also get some really great Cleric spells where you don't necessarily need a good wisdom score to use well, such as Bless or the cantrip Guidance, which is one of the most useful cantrips in all of BG3 when speaking of non-combat use, and even getting Healing Word as a level 1 Cleric just to use it to be able to pick up downed enemies from afar can be really powerful. And the final multi-class of today is focused on getting the Barbarian's Rage feature, which only requires 1 level in Barbarian. And Rage, of course, increases your damage with melee weapons, and it makes you tankier as you are resistant to physical damage while raging. So combining 1 level of Barbarian with other classes that focus in on melee weapons, such as fighters, this is actually really great for the fighter class. Having Rage can add a lot to a build. Also, the idea of being a raging rogue is pretty cool, right? And that'll be it for this video. Just note, you don't always have to be like completely optimized when you multi-class. You can, take a few levels in Druid to get Wild Shape just because you want Wild Shape. It's not necessarily the end of the world. Now, some multi-class combinations are certainly not going to be that powerful, but depending on the difficulty that you're playing Baldur's Gate 3 and also your knowledge on the overall game, you still might be able to navigate, several different weird, less potent combinations. So thank you all so much for watching, and be on the lookout for some actual multi-class builds over the next couple months as we play Baldur's Gate 3. And I'll catch you all. Actually, don't forget, you can join my Discord server. The link is below in the video description. We have a great community over there. And check out the Wolf Apparel merchandise store, the official sponsor of this channel. Catch you on the next one.